When you begin to see things others don't, it is not just an advantage, it is a burden. Awareness is not neutral. It pulls on you, it changes the way you move through the world, and it creates a distance between you and the people around you. Because the moment you notice something invisible to others, whether it's a flaw in the system, a hidden truth in human nature, or the quiet warning signs of collapse, you are no longer innocent. You can't pretend you didn't see it, you carry it, and carrying it isolates you. Think about how most people live. They move along familiar tracks, operating within a consensus reality, a shared narrative. That's what makes social life comfortable. People agree, at least superficially, on what's true, what's important, what's safe. But when you see something outside that shared frame, you disrupt the consensus. You become the one who says, "Wait a minute, something isn't right here." And that act alone can separate you from the group, even before you've explained yourself. That's the paradox. Vision can liberate you, but it can also trap you, because awareness comes with responsibility. If you notice a danger on the path ahead and remain silent, you betray not only others but also yourself. Yet if you speak up, you risk ridicule, misunderstanding, or rejection. You can't unsee what you've seen, and so the knowledge itself becomes a kind of weight pressing down on your conscience. This is why so many people avoid looking too deeply at reality. They sense, often unconsciously, that perception costs. To see clearly is to lose the comfort of ignorance. And ignorance, for all its flaws, is a kind of shelter. It protects people from anxiety, from responsibility, from conflict. But the price of that shelter is blindness, and blindness always leads to suffering down the road. When you develop the capacity to notice what others miss, you will often feel the pull of loneliness. Not because people don't exist around you, but because you begin to realize that very few of them are wrestling with the same truths. It's not that they don't care, it's that they literally don't see it. And this creates a kind of inner solitude, a sense of standing apart. Many people who are gifted with perception experience this as a kind of estrangement from the world. They feel like outsiders even when surrounded by others. But here's the danger. If you don't handle this burden properly, you can collapse under it. You can grow bitter, resenting those who can't see what you see. Or you can withdraw, deciding that the effort to communicate isn't worth the struggle. Either way, the gift of awareness can turn into a source of despair. That's why it must be paired with courage. Awareness without courage is torment, but awareness with courage, that's transformation. That's what allows you to not only endure the burden, but also use it as a source of strength. The greatest thinkers, leaders, and visionaries in history all carried this same burden. They noticed what others missed, and it weighed heavily on them. They struggled with loneliness, with misunderstanding, with the temptation to give up, but they didn't. They bore the cost. They shouldered the responsibility. And that's precisely why they made an impact. Their willingness to see and to carry, despite the pain, is what set them apart. And this is the test for you. When you see what others don't, will you shrink from it? Will you pretend you didn't notice, burying your insight under distraction or conformity? Or will you accept the burden, even though it means discomfort, even though it means being misunderstood? Because make no mistake, once you've seen, you've already been chosen. The only question left is whether you'll rise to meet that responsibility or let it break you. So, the danger of awareness is real. It is heavy. It is lonely. But it is also the doorway to meaning. To see what others don't is to be called into a deeper, more difficult, but ultimately more significant way of living. And the choice is always before you. Will you carry what you've seen, or will you deny it? The answer to that question will shape not only your life, but the lives of those who depend on your vision. And in that decision lies the true weight of awareness. Because once you see, you can never go back. The moment you begin to speak about what you see, what others don't, you collide with resistance. Not because the truth is weak, but because it threatens the fragile structures that hold people's lives together. Human beings are not purely rational, we are tribal, instinctively drawn to consensus. We want stability, harmony, a sense that everyone is moving in the same direction. When you step outside that shared agreement and point out something uncomfortable, you destabilize the equilibrium, and the group, almost reflexively, pushes back. This resistance is not always malicious. Often it is fear disguised as skepticism. People cling to familiar beliefs because those beliefs keep chaos at bay. The idea that their worldview might be incomplete, or even wrong, is profoundly unsettling. And so, when confronted with someone who challenges that worldview, they don't usually respond with gratitude. They respond with defensiveness, sometimes even hostility. It's easier to label the truth teller as arrogant, paranoid, or delusional than it is to reconsider the foundations of their own life. History is filled with this pattern. The prophets of the past, the thinkers who saw beyond the horizon of their age, were almost never celebrated in their time. Socrates was condemned for corrupting the youth. Galileo was forced to recant what he knew to be true about the cosmos. Visionaries in science, politics, and art have repeatedly faced scorn, ridicule, or persecution. And yet, their ideas eventually reshaped the very societies that once rejected them. That is the paradox. The very truths that provoke resistance often turn out to be the ones people need most. But let's not romanticize this too quickly. Resistance is painful. To be met with doubt, mockery, or even open aggression can crush the spirit of anyone who dares to speak differently. This is why so many people, even after seeing, choose to remain silent. They sense instinctively that telling the truth will make them a target. And in many cases, they're right. Truth is dangerous because it demands change, and change threatens comfort. There's a psychological principle at play here. The crowd is built on shared illusions. It's not that everyone consciously lies to themselves, it's that people agree, often unconsciously, to avoid looking too deeply at what might unravel their sense of security. When you expose that illusion, even unintentionally, you're not just disagreeing with an opinion. You're challenging the group's survival mechanism. That's why resistance can be so fierce. It's not just an argument, it's a defense of the tribe's coherence. This means that if you are someone who sees differently, you need to understand what you are walking into. You can't expect applause when you disrupt the status quo. You can't expect people to immediately embrace what unsettles them. If you don't prepare yourself for that pushback, you will misinterpret it as a sign that you're wrong. But resistance in itself is not evidence of error. In fact, it's often evidence that you've touched a nerve, that you've struck at something real. Now, here's the danger on the personal level. When the crowd resists you, it is tempting to give in, to conform, to silence yourself so you can blend back into the group. That may feel safe in the short term, but in the long term, it erodes your integrity. You know what you've seen. You know what is real. To deny it for the sake of approval is to slowly destroy yourself from within. And the tragedy is that by silencing yourself, you also deny others the chance to wrestle with the truth that could one day save them. There is another temptation too, equally dangerous, to grow resentful of the crowd. To interpret their resistance as stupidity or malice, and to retreat into bitterness or superiority. That path isolates you even further, and it poisons your vision. You must resist both extremes, silence on one side, arrogance on the other. The real challenge is to hold the truth firmly while still extending patience and compassion to those who resist it. Resistance is inevitable. It has always been. But it is not final. The same crowd that mocks today can awaken tomorrow. The same voices that dismiss you may one day echo your words. That shift may not happen quickly, and it may not even happen in your lifetime. But if the truth you carry is real, it will outlast resistance. And your role is not to guarantee its acceptance, it is to ensure its survival by having the courage to speak it. So when you face the resistance of the crowd, do not be surprised, and do not be crushed. Understand it for what it is, a defense mechanism of those not yet ready to see. Endure it, speak with humility, and carry your vision with patience. Because the truth, though resisted, has a strange way of breaking through over time. And if you can endure the resistance without losing courage or compassion, you will become not just a seer of truth, but a bearer of it, someone who keeps the flame alive until others are ready to see the light. One of the most subtle dangers of seeing what others don't is not external at all, it's internal. It's the temptation to believe that because you perceive something hidden, you are somehow above those who do not. This is the danger of arrogance. And it can be more destructive than ridicule or rejection from the crowd, because it doesn't just alienate you from others, it corrodes you from within. It's natural to feel a sense of pride when you notice patterns others overlook. That pride, in its healthiest form, is confidence. It gives you the strength to carry a heavy truth when no one else will. But unchecked, it can quickly mutate into superiority. You start to look down on others. You begin to treat your insight not as a gift, but as proof of your own exceptionalism. And in that state, you lose something essential: humility. Without humility, truth becomes a weapon, not a light. There's an irony here. The very gift of awareness, which could be used to guide and serve, becomes twisted into a tool of isolation. You end up alienating the very people you might have helped. People don't reject you because of what you see. They reject you because of how you carry it. They sense the self-righteousness, the contempt, and it makes them close off even further. In that moment, your vision loses its power not because it isn't real, but because it has been poisoned by pride. We have countless historical examples of this danger. Some of the most destructive figures in history were not blind fools, but individuals who saw with extraordinary clarity, and then used that clarity to elevate themselves rather than uplift others. They mistook their insight for proof of superiority, and their arrogance blinded them to the humanity of those around them. In the end, their vision was not a blessing to the world, but a curse. That is the shadow side of seeing what others don't. It gives you power, and power always comes with the temptation to serve yourself first. This is why humility is not optional, it's essential. To see clearly is not to be better, but to be more responsible. Your insight doesn't entitle you to superiority, obligates you to service, and humility is what keeps you tethered to that responsibility. It reminds you that the truths you see are not yours alone. They were given, or revealed, not to inflate your ego, but to prepare you for sacrifice. Think about it this way: if you truly see more than others, then you should also see your own flaws more clearly. You should recognize the ways in which you fall short, the biases and blind spots that remain hidden from you. True vision doesn't just expose the faults of the world, it exposes the faults within yourself. And if it doesn't do that, then maybe it isn't vision at all, it's just vanity masquerading as insight. This is where the discipline comes in. When you speak about what you've seen, do you speak to elevate yourself or to elevate others? Do you use your knowledge to prove people wrong or to help them see more deeply? The difference is not subtle, it's everything. Because arrogance alienates, but humility invites. People can feel the difference. They may still resist what you say, but they won't sense hostility. Instead, they'll sense that you are on their side even when you're challenging them. That posture of humility makes it possible for the truth to eventually take root. The hardest test of vision is not whether you can see what others don't, but whether you can hold that vision without letting it corrupt your character. Can you carry knowledge without using it to make yourself feel superior? Can you walk the lonely path of awareness without resenting others for not joining you? Can you speak the truth without wielding it like a sword of pride? Those are the questions that separate genuine visionaries from destructive ones. If you fail this test, your vision will eat you alive. You'll become isolated not because people couldn't handle the truth, but because they couldn't handle your arrogance. You will end up bitter, self-righteous, convinced that no one understands you, when in fact it was your own pride that closed the door. But if you pass this test, if you anchor your vision in humility, then your awareness becomes a gift. It becomes something that can be received slowly by those who need it most. So the challenge is clear: resist arrogance. Resist the temptation to elevate yourself above others simply because you see what they don't. Carry your vision with humility, not superiority, with patience, not contempt. And remember this: insight without humility is corruption, but insight with humility is transformation. To see what others don't is not to be above them, it is to be responsible for them. If awareness is a burden, and if resistance is inevitable, and if arrogance is a danger, then what remains is the final and perhaps most important truth. Vision carries responsibility. To see what others don't is not an invitation to retreat into yourself, nor is it a license to elevate yourself above the crowd. It is a call to act. If you have been entrusted with sight, then you also bear the duty to translate that sight into something that benefits others. Without responsibility, vision becomes sterile, a curiosity at best, a torment at worst. With responsibility, vision transforms into purpose. Responsibility is what turns raw awareness into meaning. It is one thing to notice hidden patterns, to detect what lies beneath the surface. But unless you take that knowledge and use it to guide, to warn, to build, or to heal, it remains locked within you. It becomes like water in a stagnant pond, still lifeless, even toxic. Responsibility is the current that sets it in motion, that allows insight to flow outward and nourish life beyond yourself. This is why every great visionary has also been a servant in some sense. Not a servant in the weak or submissive way, but in the highest sense of service. They did not simply hoard their knowledge. They bore the weight of communicating it, of embodying it, of sacrificing for it. And that sacrifice is always costly. It means risking misunderstanding. It means enduring ridicule. It means pressing forward even when no one listens. But that is the price of responsibility. To refuse that price is to waste the very gift that sets you apart. Think of the alternative. Suppose you see what others don't, but you decide it is too difficult to act on it. You retreat, you remain silent, you let the crowd move forward blind while you preserve yourself. That may feel safe, but it is not safety. It is cowardice disguised as caution. And the cost of that cowardice is that your insight dies with you. No one else benefits from what you carried. The truth you saw vanishes into the grave, leaving the world unchanged. That is the tragedy of wasted vision. It becomes an echo that never finds a voice. On the other hand, if you take responsibility for what you've seen, then even in the face of resistance, even in the midst of loneliness, your insight becomes generative. It plants seeds in the minds of others. Some may reject it outright, but others may remember it, wrestle with it, let it grow quietly until the time is right. And in this way, your vision outlives you. It becomes part of the invisible architecture of the future. That is the true power of responsibility. It extends the life of your insight beyond your own limited existence. But let's be clear, responsibility is not easy. It demands courage, but also patience. It requires the strength to endure being ignored and the wisdom to know how to speak so that your words can actually be heard. Responsibility means carrying not only the truth itself, but also the weight of others' reactions to it. It is a double burden, the burden of seeing and the burden of serving. But there is no path around it. To see without acting is betrayal. To act without humility is corruption. Only responsibility redeems the cost of vision. And that is where meaning lies. Human beings are not sustained by comfort or ease. We are sustained by meaning. And meaning is born where responsibility is embraced. If you want your life to matter, if you want the pain of awareness and the sting of rejection to amount to something greater than suffering, you must choose responsibility. Because it is in responsibility that the chaos of seeing transforms into the order of purpose. So the question comes to you now: what will you do with what you've seen? Will you silence it? Will you exploit it? Or will you shoulder it humbly and courageously for the sake of something beyond yourself? That is the final test of vision, and it is the one that defines whether your life becomes a story of bitterness or a story of meaning. Because in the end, to see what others don't is not about privilege, it is about duty. And the measure of your life will not be in what you saw, but in what you chose to do with it. Once you see what others don't, you can never unsee it. The only question left is whether you will hide from it, or rise to carry it with courage, humility, and responsibility. Choose to rise,